Hi, we are learning Yoma, Daf Nun Amid Aleph. We are in the middle of a shaila of whether, if after the Kohen Gadol shechts his par, if he dies, so can the Kohen Gadol who takes his place use the same dam to do the avodah, or does he have to bring a new par? So that was a machlekes we brought between Reish Lakish and Reb Chanina, as well as Rav Ami and Reb Yitzchak Nafcha. So at the top of the page, Eser Reb Yitzchak Nafcha l'Rav Ami, Reb Yitzchak Nafcha, who holds that bedamai shel par, v'afilu bedamai shel par, that you're allowed to use, another Kohen Gadol is allowed to use the par of his predecessor. So he brings a raya, he has a kasha on Rav Ami. The pasuk says, "V'hoitzi es kol hapar." Now this is after the car was shechted, and it says, "V'hoitzi es kol hapar." You're going to take out the whole par. So you see that the par, even after it's shechted, is called the par. Says the Gemara, answers the Gemara, "Sheyoitzi es kuloi." No, we're talking the way you read the pasuk is v'hoitzi es kol hapar means you take out everything that's left from the par. Okay, that works. We have another pasuk though. Ves parachatas, ves sa'irachatas. Again, this is after shechita, and it's referring to it's calling it a parachatas. And now it's not talking. It doesn't say kol. It's not referring to everything. So Amar Papa, ba'aru basu peresh. If we're talking if it's got its hide and its flesh and its insides, so kuli amalei pliki. Everybody agrees that is still called a par. Ki pligi, where they argue b'dam. Machlekes is specifically by the dam. Can you call the dam par? So mar savar dam ikri par, mar savar dam la ikri par. One sheet that holds the dam is called par. Again, remember the pasuk says b'zois yavi arin ela kodesh b'par ben bakar. So if the dam is considered par, so then the Kohen Gadol can use this. If it's not called par, so then he's got a shachti new par. Says the Gemara, Amar Vashi mistavra commander Amar dam ikri par. You know what? It makes a lot of sense to say that dam is also called par, because let's read the pasuk. Dichsev bezois yavei Aaron el kodesh. With this, Aaron will come into the kodesh, and it says bepar ben bakar. Now, atu bekarne ma'ile. Are you bringing this cow in by its horns? Obviously not. Ela bedamai. You're bringing in the blood of the par. V'kari le par, and the Torah calls it par. So it's very clear in the pasuk l'chayra that par doesn't just mean a live animal; it means the dam of the par as well. Okay, that's a shtarka raya. V'idach, what does the other sheet to do? Now he says you're reading the pasuk a little bit too literally. What the pasuk means is ba'meh huchsher Aaron lavei kodesh. What does Aaron need to be able to, what prepares him to go into the Kodesh? What's necessary to go into the Kodesh? And one of the things that are necessary is a par ben bakar lachatos. Okay. Frakta Gemara, typically, I could answer this question very simply. There's a halacha of the chamesh chatois hamesos, 5 carbon chatas that they have to be killed. If something happens, so there are different scenarios, 5 scenarios. I'll tell you what they are. There's a chatas that the owners die. There's a chatas that the owners use a different animal instead of the one that was separated. Like an instance, if the animal got lost and then it took another one, so the owners use a different animal to be mechaper on this chatas. Vlad chatas is the child of the chatas. Temuras chatas is a halach of temura. If you have an animal that you were makdish to be a carbon, and you say I want another animal to be in its place, so that doesn't work. It's called a temura. So if you did that to a carbon chatas or a chatas sha'ovra shnasa, chatas needs to be a year old, and this is not going to be more than a year. So that is those 5 scenarios are halachal meshmisina that the chatas needs to be killed. They're called chatas hamesos. Okay. So frakta Gemara, 1 second. You tell me the par, which is a chatas, the owner died. The Kohen Gadol died. So isn't this a case of this is a case of a chatas that the owner died. The rule is the chatas that the owner dies, the animal goes to misa, and I guess we're assuming if it goes to misa, so then the same would mean that another kohen gadol can't use the dam. So typically, so we can answer the shayla because it is a chatas shemesu ba'aleh. That's the kasha. So the answer is the Gemara. Amar le Ravin barav ada le Rava amni talmidech. Your Talmud says, your Talmidim say, in the Amar of Amram, the name of Rav Amram, chatas tzibur hi v'loy lamisa azla. You can't prove that from here. You can't answer the shayla from here because this par, even though it was Aaron the Kohen Gadol did smicha on it, but lamaisa it's a chatas tzibur because it wasn't just mechaper on him; it was mechaper on the whole sheva, all of the kehanim. So this is considered a chatas tzibur, and therefore it does not go lamisa. It's not one of the 5 chatas hamesos. Okay. So therefore, we're back to we can still get back to the shayla of can the other kohen gadol use the dam? Okay. Now the Gemara is going to discuss though, is this really considered a chatas hatzibur? Says the Gemara. It's a buggy room. Ditnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Amar le Reb Meir. Reb Meir says, Amar le Reb Meir. Reb Meir said to him, V'alei par Yom Kippurim, v'chavite kohen gadol, u'pesach, the carbon yachid hein, v'deichen es ha-Shabbos v'satuma. So now the point here is that this is a middle of a discussion. The discussion pertains to whether or not the tumah. What's going to be the rule regarding things that belong to the tzibur and to the things that belong to and things, which karbanos are deicha Shabbos and which are brought betumah. That's the discussion that this Mishnah comes in. And Rameir says, 1 second, the Par of Yom Kippur, the Chavite Kohen Gadol, and the Pesach are all a carbon yachid, and they are deicha Shabbos and tumah. Okay, so that's his point is that don't tell me that you have to be a carbon tzibur to be deicha. You see, even if you're a carbon yachid, you could be deicha. Okay. Now, what do we want to prove from here? If that's what Meir is saying, lav michlal, can't we deduce the ikal aman damar? There is somebody who's of the opinion that tzibur, that the Par of Yom Kippur is a carbon tzibur. Meaning, if Meir is saying the Par of Yom Kippurim is a carbon yachid, mashma that there is somebody who holds that it's a carbon tzibur. Meir says that's not a very good diak. Ulatamech, according to your reasoning, diktani. Let's learn a little further there. It says, Amar le Reb Yaakov, v'lei par helam davar shel tzibur, v'siri avedes kechavim, v'chagiga de carbon tzibur, v'ein deichen le'es ha-Shabbos, v'le'es ha-tumah. So they're making a point that just because you're a carbon tzibur doesn't mean you could be deicha, doesn't mean you could be deicha Shabbos. So, and they're not brought betumah. So these things are not deicha Shabbos, not brought betumah. So mechalal the ikal amad, do you want to tell me that from the fact that these are called the carbon tzibur, that there's somebody who holds that they're called the carbon yachid? That's ridiculous. Ella the Tanakama kama hadrele. You're taking it totally out of context. Let's describe what was actually going on there. The shame de ka'amar carbon tzibur deiches Shabbos v'esatuma. The carbon yachid ain't deiches Shabbos v'esatuma. So there was a Tanakam who made such a statement that you want to know what the criteria for being deiches Shabbos and for being deiches tumah. It depends if it's a carbon tzibur or a carbon yachid. And to that they attacked. Amalei Reb Meir, what are you talking about? Carbon yachid. Klalu, you tell me a Karban Yachid is never Deicha Shabbos? It's not true. V'lei par Yom Kippurim, v'chaviti kohen gadol, u'pesach lekarban yachid, u'v'deichen as a Shabbos, v'esatuma. And Rabbi Yaakov tells him, Karban Sibur Klalu. You tell me every Karban Sibur is Deicha Shabbos? Is Deicha Shabbos? It's not true. V'lei par helam davar shel Sibur, v'sirei v'diskachavim v'chagiga the Karban Siburu, v'ein Deichen leisa Shabbos leisatuma. They're not Deicha Shabbos and Tuma. So you got their klal wrong. El nekayt hay klal b'yadich. So what is the rule? Kol shezmanei kavua, anything that has a set time. Deiches Shabbos as a tumah afilu b'yachid v'kol shekain afilu b'yachid. It doesn't make a difference if it's a Karban Sibur or a Karban Yachid. The nakuda is this something that has zmanei kavua? That's the klal, and the other way as well. V'chol she'ein zmanei kavua. It doesn't make, even if it's a Karban Sibur, if it does not have a set time, it's not going to be Deicha Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, so that raya that the Gemara tried to bring from these Tanoim is out. So let's try weiter. Again, the premise of Amram is saying is that the par of Yom Kippur, the par Kohen Gadol of the par of Yom Kippur is considered a Karban Sibur, and therefore it's not a Chatas HaMesos, and therefore you cannot be Paisha the Shayla like that. Abaye has a Shayla like this. Par v'sar Yom Kippurim sha'avdu. If you have the par or the sar that got lost, now that's a pretty lousy job. V'hifresh achem tachtein. So then you bring another one. Okay, they have backup. Kulam yamusu. Now when you find the other ones, they need to be put to death. It sounds like they're considered a chatas hamesos. It's kind of like even though it's it sounds like it's a chatas hamesos. It's going to be put to death. It says the Gemara. V'chein, similarly. If you have a seer that you bring because of the zara that got lost and you're mafresh another one in place of them, kulam yamusu. The Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. But Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, no, yistavu. You let them graze until they die, until they get a mum. Yistavu, you let them graze, they get a mum. V'yimkru, then you sell them. V'yipu d'meyan l'dava, and you use their money as a nedava to the mizbeach. If there is ever a time where there are not karbanos being brought on the mizbeach, so they had a fund that they would bring karbanos from to keep the mizbeach busy. Why does he say this? She'ein chatas sibur mesa, because Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon are of the opinion that a chatas that the par of Yom Kippurim is not a chatas sibur shemesa. So we have Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon that clearly hold that way. A raya to Rav Amram. Amrlei, so he tells him, my par. When it says here par, it doesn't mean the par of Yom Kippur, it means the par helm davar shel tzibur. A par that was brought for, if the tzibur forgot a halacha, or they were instructed to do something against the bezin instructed them to do an aveira, so then they have to bring, b'shaygig, so they have to bring a par helm davar. The Gemara says you can't say that. The Brisa says Parsha Yom Kippurim. Nakikatani, when it says Yom Kippur, it's referring to the Seir, to the goat. But the par is referring to not the par of Yom Kippur, but the par of Helam Dover. For example, I have another Brisa that's mefurish. Parsha Yom Kippurim, V'seir Yom Kippurim, Sha'avdu v'hifresh achem tachtein, Kol Yimusi Div Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lazar b'Shimon Aimim, Yirawachi Yitztav Yimkru Yipul B'dein Meil Anadava, Shein Chadas Sibur Mesa. So you see clearly Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon clearly discussing the par of Yom Kippur hold that it is a chatas hamesu. Says the Gemara, Loi tema she'ein chatas sibur mesa. That's not what he means. Ela ema she'ein chatas hashutvin mesa. What he means, it's not a chatas. It's not going to be put to death because it's a chatas havshutvin, not a chatas of the tzibur. Now, Lamaisa, that's fine. It could be a chatas of a shutvin. The reason why chatas of shutvin is not mesa is because in order to be one of the again there was a halacha meshimesina of the 5 chamisha chatois hamesis, and the only ones that are it's applicable is if it needs to be shaykh to all of those 5, in order for it to be have the din of just one of them. It needs to be able to have the din of all of them. So being that shutvin cannot make a temura, so therefore the temura doesn't apply to a chatas of shutvin, and therefore the chatas of shutvin shem imesu ba'aleh, it also will not apply. Okay, technical point. Now lamaisa, who cares? Rav Amim's teretz. The question we started was, why are you asking a shayla whether or not the new kohen gadol can use the new kohen gadol can use the power of the previous kohen gadol? It should be considered. It should be chatas hamesais because it's a chatas shemesu ba'aleh. Teretz is that a chatas of tzibur is not mesa, and we're saying no. Chatas of it's not considered a chatas of tzibur. It's considered a chatas of shutvin. Okay, fine, but a chatas of shutvin is also not killed, so he could still use the dam of the next kohen gadol. Use the dam of the previous kohen gadol. So my nafkamina. Who cares if it's because it's a chatas of a tzibur or a chatas of shutvin? Okay, you're right. Lagabi, the teretz of the Gemara, it does make a difference. But Rav wanted to make sure nobody would make a mistake. I don't want you to think that the tzibur of kehanim is called a tzibur. If you hold that a shevet would bring a par helm dover, if a bezin of a shevet paskin to do an avera b'shoigig, and they do it, so then they have to bring a par helm dover. What if the bezin of kehanim paskin for kehanim to do something wrong b'shoigig, and they do it? Do they bring a par helm dover? Well, if you hold that the kehanim the tzibur of kehanim are called a tzibur, so then they would, and that is what Rav wants us to let us know, that they are not called a tzibur, and therefore the par that's brought for them in Kippur is not called the chatas of a tzibur; it's called the chatas of shutvin. Alrighty, we'll see you tomorrow.